a country villa where many rich people gathered. The people in the villa were having a nice time and relaxing to the fullest. One man in the courtyard of the villa was passing by the swimming pool. Suddenly, he noticed something. The man crouched down near the pool and began to gaze. At that moment, someone grabbed the man by the collar and pulled him straight into the pool. Then, many people emerged from the pool. The commander told everyone to get out of the water and take their positions. A bald man was sitting and resting nearby. He noticed the oddities going on and immediately grabbed his weapon, telling everyone to show themselves immediately. However, the bald man was eliminated rather quickly. The rest of the bandits reacted lightning fast, grabbing their weapons and preparing to defend themselves from the enemy's attack. As soon as they ran out of the villa, a light and noise grenade flew towards them. Covering the bandit as a shield, the Special Forces members rushed forward. They had the bandits in their sights, and they were not organized. However, one of the bandits had taken cover on the other side of the villa. He did not go into a frontal attack, but came from the rear and tried to attack the Special Forces. The man failed, as the Special Forces commander ran up to him and deftly knocked him out. He twisted the man's arm and then easily eliminated him. The perimeter was cleared, so he ordered the snipers to take up their positions. The man was the senior instructor of a special unit, Mu Ye. The remaining bandits took refuge in the villa, but because of this, they found themselves trapped and their escape routes cut off. Therefore, one by one, the Special Forces eliminated the gangsters. 10 minutes later, a message was received that the main target had been eliminated. The man informed the others that a helicopter with reinforcements would arrive in 30 minutes. The captain sat down and rested at the villa. Just then, a subordinate ran up to the captain with a bottle of wine in his hands. He asked the captain if he wanted to drink some expensive wine. Mu Ye asked the others to be patient, as they had to wait for the helicopter. However, one of his subordinates believed that the reinforcements on the helicopter would drink everything that was there. One of the subordinates asked if anyone had found a game console. Another subordinate thought that it was time for the man to grow up and stop playing games. Someone was happy to have found a beautiful gold lighter. Mu Ye called them a bunch of fools who only cared about beautiful women. Since its founding, Country L has been in constant military conflict with Country H over territory. Under the leadership of its newly elected leader, Country L's military power has grown rapidly. He used secret weapons to keep the country fighting and eventually regain its occupied territory. Of all the aces up his sleeve, the most famous is a unit of fighters called Spark. Soon, the Spark unit noticed that a helicopter had arrived quite quickly, in less than 30 minutes. This situation made Mu Ye wary, as he even found the sound strange. His fears were not in vain, as they were suddenly fired upon from the helicopter. Everything around them turned into a fiery trap, and only then did Mu Ye realize that the enemy had arrived. He had no idea where the enemy had gotten reinforcements from, since the mission was completely secret. Mu Ye requested support from headquarters via radio, as enemy reinforcements had arrived. He ordered his men to be on alert and the snipers to cover the Special Forces. The men took cover in the villa building, firing at the helicopter from there. However, Xiaogu was exposed and was hit by a shot from the helicopter. Mu Ye asked the man if he was okay. Nevertheless, the man was unharmed and had only been grazed by the bullet. Pouring wine from a bottle onto his wound, he complained that he was wasting white wine. Mu Ye asked if the sniper was in place, and the sniper confirmed that he was already in place. He asked Mu Ye to lean on him and took aim. Mu Ye told him to go ahead, but at that moment he froze. He started shooting again, but then suddenly began to think. He didn't understand how their mission could have been exposed. Soon the enemy surrounded them, and they found themselves trapped like rats in a mousetrap. Mu Ye realized that they were doomed, so he grabbed a grenade and tried to throw it at the enemies, but at that moment he lost his right hand. He was wounded from behind, where his team was supposed to cover him, which came as a big surprise to him. His hand with the grenade fell right in front of his wounded subordinate. However, at that moment, another subordinate ran up, grabbed the grenade, and threw it at the enemies. This individual's actions did not cause harm to enemy forces, but the man himself was instantly punished with a hail of bullets. Mu Ye was still trying to understand why the enemies were behind them. At that moment, a gun was pointed at his head. However, the answer to Mu Ye's question was found quite quickly when a man appeared and said that nothing is impossible in this world. Mu Ye immediately recognized the man. There was a tattoo on the back of the man's hand and 3 rings on his fingers. A villain must always remain incognito, so he cannot be shown at the very beginning. He was not a movie villain, so he immediately decided to end everything and eliminate Mu Ye. Mu Ye kept trying to understand how this was possible and why this particular man made this choice. Suddenly, a bright light from the half-closed blinds fell on his face. He opened his eyes, trying to make sense of where he was even. The last thing he remembered was the traitor cutting his life short. He was too weak at the moment, but he felt like he was still alive. There was only one question in his mind now. Why was he still alive? Looking at his right hand, Mu Ye thought that that traitor had decided to torture him. He wondered if enemy forces were watching him, where the camera was, and why he was still there. His wound was deep, so the first thing he decided to do was to stop the blood. He had lost too much blood, so he needed to hurry. Walking over to the table, he found a stapler on the table, so he decided to use it. Mu Ye quickly sewed up his wound with the staples and the stapler. It was incredibly painful to do this. However, the pain made him turn his attention to his hand, and he realized that this hand didn't belong to him at all. The voice didn't belong to him either. Just at that moment, he saw his reflection in the mirror. A little frightened, he slowly approached the mirror to get a better look at himself in the reflection. Looking at himself in the reflection of the mirror, Mu Ye had absolutely no idea who it was in front of him. The man couldn't understand what had happened and how something like this was possible. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, which alarmed the guy. A woman knocked on the door of the room. She informed Xiaoxian that dinner was ready. She admitted that it wasn't easy for the guy, but she asked the guy to go out and have lunch with his family. Mu Ye couldn't understand which Xiaoxian was even talking about. The woman informed him that she had cooked his favorite dish. These words caused the guy's mind to trigger. Suddenly, a memory of trying to feed him a burger with a cockroach came into the guy's mind. Xiaoxian didn't understand why they were doing this to him, since he had done nothing wrong to anyone. However, the guy became indignant that no one could eat lunch because of Xiaoxian. People around gathered to watch the spectacle. The guy confessed that they would have finished eating long ago if it wasn't for Xiaoxian. He told Xiaoxian to hurry up as he was very hungry. Xiaoxian didn't want to eat any burger and started complaining that Qin Tian had locked him in the restroom. At that moment, another guy came up to him and kicked him in the stomach. He warned Xiaoxian not to do anything stupid. The guy reminded Xiaoxian that he had proof. Also, Xiaoxian is disturbing everyone's rest, and everyone can see it. The guy then demanded that Xiaoxian apologize. All the people around gathered to watch the spectacle of Xiaoxian eating a burger with a cockroach. Eventually, the poor guy was broken and pulled a roach burger into his mouth. The guards and the rest of the people watched this spectacle with anticipation, and Xiaoxian was incredibly humiliated and embarrassed. Mu Ye now understood why the guy had committed such a horrible act. After much bullying, the cockroach burger was the last straw that broke the teenager. He just wanted to end his suffering. However, the irony was that Mu Ye was reborn in Xiaoxian's body. He was reborn into a teenager from country A named Huang Xiaoxian. Mu Ye's past life froze in that horrible moment when a traitor appeared in front of him. Along with his teammates, he lost his trust and hope. At that moment, Mu Ye vowed to definitely take revenge and never forgive traitors. Fate ordered him to be reborn in the body of a weak teenager. He had no strength, money, and power, but his hometown had one saying, "In the middle of nowhere, you can find pastures with plenty of water and grass." He had memories and experiences from his past life, and that set him apart from ordinary people. He knew his enemy, and his enemy doesn't know him, so the advantage was on his side. Now his main goal was to gain authority and find an opportunity to gather information. He needed to be patient and wait for the right moment. His stomach growled loudly. The guy realized that it was difficult to conquer peaks on an empty stomach. First, he needed to adapt to his current situation and surroundings, and then deal with the problem. And now he needed to get to know his new family. Looking in the closet, the guy found a note. After reading the note and changing his clothes, the guy promised to fulfill Xiaoxian's wish so that he could rest in peace. In his farewell note, Xiaoxian asked his parents to believe that if he survived, he would become the strongest person. Mom was happy that Shaoxian had finally come out of his room. Dad noted that Mom had put a lot of effort into preparing lunch, so he asked his son to be sure to eat everything before the food got cold. The new Shaoxian did not argue and was going to eat everything. He looked closely at the man and woman who were Huang Shaoxian's parents. Mu Ye never had parents. Looking at the food, the guy was surprised that they ate this every day because this food smelled much better than in a cafe. However, using chopsticks was incredibly difficult for him. He couldn't understand how people in Asian countries could eat with chopsticks at all. As soon as he ate the first bite, he was incredibly delighted. Chinese cuisine was so rich and delicious to him. Mum tried to ask why the guy was acting this way. However, Dad stopped her, reminding his wife that their son might not have eaten in a long time. And besides, they had already experienced something similar before. Mom agreed with her husband. The most important thing for her was that her son was healthy, which finally gave her peace of mind. She often brought food to Shaoxian's door, asking him not to forget to eat so that he could study well. One day, Shaoxian told his mother that he would no longer be attending the academy. His mother became concerned and attempted to determine whether he was having difficulty studying or if something else had occurred. Shaoxian was unable to disclose what had happened to him, so he simply stated that he was ill. While her son was eating, his mother noticed his arm was wrapped in bandages. She admitted that since her son had been attending the Mountain Hawk Academy, he had been coming home covered in bruises. She was about to bring up the fact that someone was beating her son, but the new Shaoxian interrupted her, saying that it was because of military training. The parents tried to find out if their son was getting along with his new acquaintances and classmates at the academy. His mother tried again to find out if her son was being bullied, but Shaoxian cut her off again, saying that everyone was very kind to him. His mother was so happy to hear that her son was doing well because she had been very worried about him all these days. The guy asked his mother not to worry about anything because he would repay his new acquaintances with the same attitude they showed him. 2 days later, the guy went back to the academy. Since he had inherited Huang Shaoxian's life, he had also inherited all of his grievances and desires. He called out to one of the passers-by and asked her where his dormitory was. The girl was very surprised. She didn't even understand why this disgusting guy was behaving this way. Meanwhile, the blonde man was lying on the bed playing with his phone. He complained that he had lost the game again. Shaoxian entered the room, thinking that the pests would never understand their mistake unless they were taught a lesson. As soon as he entered the room, he closed the door behind him. He loudly announced that he was back. The guy addressed everyone, calling them losers. He even asked if they were surprised that he had reappeared. The blonde man was delighted because, after losing the game, he was looking for someone to take his anger out on, and the guy came to him himself. He approached Shaoxian and asked where the guy had been for the past few days and whether he liked the burger. Glancing at his bed, Shaoxian noticed that the blonde man had made a mess of his bed. Mu Ye considered Huang Shaoxian a fool because such nobodies would never treat him well. The blonde man was outraged by the tone the guy used when talking to him. Besides, he had only thrown a little trash on his bed. Coming even closer, he asked what Shaoxian would do to him for such an act. The blonde man told the guy not to mention the ruined bed, otherwise he would come to his house. However, Shaoxian did not listen to the blonde man's tirade of insults and simply punched him in the chin. He remembered that there was a saying in the East, "When raising children, don't spare the rod." The blonde man instantly lost consciousness from the blow to his chin. The others began to protest that the guy had attacked their beloved Qin Tian. Shaoxian took up a fighting stance. He understood perfectly well that in terms of physical fitness, his current body was too weak. However, as a former military man, he knew that the most powerful weapons in the human body were the elbows and knees. So he began to use his elbows and knees to attack the remaining opponents in front of him. The guy believed that if you used your elbows and knees, even a weakling could prevail against a stronger opponent. All of his opponents were lying on the floor, unconscious. The guy ran his hand back through his hair and declared that from that day forward, none of Huang Shaoxian's offenders would escape retribution. Some time ago, a guy was running around the stadium. The instructor blew his whistle, signaling that everyone could line up. All the runners were incredibly exhausted. The instructor told Shaoxian to come to him. Slowly, the guy approached the instructor. However, at that moment, the instructor suddenly hit him so hard that the guy's legs buckled. He asked him sternly why he was lagging behind at the very end. The instructor complained that the guy should be ashamed of himself, as even the girls had overtaken him. Shaoxian explained that he had already told the instructor that he had had a fever yesterday and his body had not yet recovered. However, the instructor told the guy to shut up. He said that flu season was long over, so the guy shouldn't use that as an excuse. The instructor believed that the guy had no desire for self-improvement but had time to come up with excuses. The guy wanted to say that he was telling the truth, but the instructor grabbed him by the hair and told him to stop making excuses. Suddenly, the instructor hit the guy again with his left hand with all his strength, while the others watched happily. He said that the guy's hair was too long and that he looked like a girl. The instructor believed that the guy's father had simply failed to teach him properly, without explaining what a real man should look like. He even started insulting the guy's father. Then the instructor said that special training for first-year students at the Mountain Hawk Academy was a tradition that had been upheld since the school was founded. He believed that this tradition should be taken seriously because it could affect the final grade at the end of the year. The instructor even announced to everyone that they could end up like the guy kneeling in front of him if they didn't try hard. Huang Shaoxian tried to understand why the others were always bullying him, why he had become a victim. Returning to reality, the new Shaoxian understood perfectly well that the guy had simply been used as an example. He believed that this was a common disciplinary practice among the military, but he disagreed, considering such a method cruel towards ordinary students. Shaoxian's memory began to return, but he still had some gaps. He felt as if all this had happened to him personally. He needed time to learn about Country A and gather information, otherwise he might get confused and do something rash. As he continued jogging, the guy became even more aware that he had a very frail body and that training would take a long time. Suddenly, he stumbled and almost fell face first onto the asphalt. Nevertheless, he managed to stay on his feet, but sadly noted that his coordination and reaction speed in his current body were also not in the best condition. In the end, he decided to meet with the instructor on Monday. As soon as he returned home, his mother opened the door for him. She thought that Shaoxian had forgotten his keys at home, since he couldn't open the door himself. Her son confirmed her guess. His mother noticed that he had been leaving home early lately. She wondered whether her son was training or what he was doing at all. The guy confirmed her guesses again. In fact, he felt sorry for his mother, who didn't even know that her son was dead. A lucky Special Forces soldier had been reborn in her son's body. However, this was irreversible, so he had to accept it and move on with his life. He decided to talk to his mother. The guy told his mother that he was interested in a small town. The saying about the sandbar made a huge impression on him. People who don't know how to climb will eventually die. He was grateful to his current parents for giving him a second life, but he had his own worldview. The guy noted that he was already an adult, which meant it was time for him to learn to climb on his own. Mom and Dad were happy to hear such words from their son, because not long ago they had been very worried about him. Nevertheless, in his thoughts, he promised his parents that he would take revenge on all the bullies who had once hurt Shaoxian. October 21st, the last day of the annual exams at the Mountain Hawk Academy. The instructor sat in the classroom and watched videos of female students he had filmed while they were running. Thanks to his micro camera, he was able to capture what he considered to be amazing footage. The man thought that the work had been done to the highest standard, so if he edited the videos he had received a little and sold them on the internet, he would make a fortune. He watched the videos and admired the girls. But suddenly, Shaoxian came into view, ruining the whole shot. He couldn't understand how such a flawed guy had gotten into the best video. The man even noticed that he should thank the guy because thanks to him, he was going to move up one step higher on the career ladder. Otherwise, with his resume, he wouldn't have been able to get into Dasheng. The man was thrilled because he believed that Shaoxian was his lucky ticket. One day, Qin Tian heard that the man wanted to get a job as a security guard at Dasheng. He even laughed at the man, saying that he was talking nonsense. The man admitted that he understood everything. He knew that Dasheng's security guards were retired Special Forces soldiers, so of course he couldn't compare to them since he was just an ordinary police officer. Qin Tian noted that since the man understood everything, he couldn't just let him go. The man believed that the guy needed to return to training for first-year students at the Mountain Hawk Academy, as the academy's director attached great importance to the closed training program for first-year students. He also emphasized that the program was a key factor in the end-of-year evaluations. The man noted that he understood perfectly well that Qin Tian did not like others encroaching on his freedom and comfort, so he did not want to restrict Qin Tian in any way. However, Qin Tian asked the man rhetorically if he was capable of such a thing. The man immediately assured the guy that he did not dare to doubt his abilities. Nevertheless, he noted that in this way, Qin Tian would avoid unnecessary risks and trouble. He suddenly even admitted that he had some connections in the criminal district of Sicheng, so if Qin Tian needed any contraband, he would definitely get it. The man even shared that he could get red pills if Qin Tian needed them. Upon hearing about the red pill, Qin Tian was surprised. He immediately noticed that the man was a good guy. The man began to shower him with compliments again. Qin Tian finally warmed up to him. He said that his older brother was responsible for Dasheng's security, and he never got along with him. Therefore, he made the man an offer. If the man could get him the red pill, he would put in a good word for him, and maybe he would be accepted into the Dasheng security team. The man was delighted and said that if Qin Tian helped him join Dasheng, he would give him not only the pill, but also his life. Qin Tian decided to test the man's loyalty after he said those words. He pointed to Xiaoxian and told the man to beat up the guy who was studying with him in special training. The man thought the guy was Qin Tian's enemy, but Qin Tian admitted that he simply didn't like the guy's hairstyle. Returning to reality, the man noted that the guy was simply unlucky to become the target of a scoundrel. And then he continued watching the video with the girls. At that moment, someone knocked on the office door. The man pulled on his cap and tried to turn off the computer. He couldn't understand who could have come to the office at noon. As soon as he asked the person knocking on the door to come in, Xiaoxian entered. The man immediately thought that it was wrong to talk about people behind their backs, but after all the bullying he had endured, he didn't think the guy would ever come back to school. However, he noticed that the guy looked completely different from before and had even changed his hairstyle. Xiaoxian stared intently at the man and began to size him up. He saw a man in front of him, about 35 years old, about 180 centimeters tall, weighing approximately 85 kilograms. The man's figure was relatively proportional, with excess fat, weak shoulders, a slow gait, and a steady posture. The guy assumed that the man was completely unprepared. In addition, he noticed that the man had a habit of holding his belt with his right hand, which indicated his military past. The man's hands were rough, possibly from training. According to his assumptions, the man did not have a high level of physical fitness. The man asked why the guy was looking for him. Judging by the thickness of the man's left arm, the guy assumed that his left arm had been pulled back. There were no bullet marks on the man's arm, so he decided to rule out artillery. After analyzing all the available information, Xiaoxian concluded that the man in front of him had a slow-witted personality and low awareness of safety precautions. He also concluded that the man was a security guard and had no experience fighting on the battlefield. However, with his current physical condition, a one-on-one fight with the man was risky, so the guy came up with another plan. He gave the instructor a gift. The instructor sighed, wondering if the guy had decided to appease him. He noted that Xiaoxian had insulted Qin Tian, so he couldn't accept a gift from him, so he told the guy to get lost. The guy now understood perfectly well that the instructor knew perfectly well that Xiaoxian had been bullied all this time. Xiaoxian decided to play his trump card. He explained that the instructor had misunderstood him and that Qin Tian had actually already forgiven him. He also added that he was carrying out Qin Tian's orders as his confidant. The instructor was surprised that Qin Tian forgave the guy. He couldn't understand how that was even possible, because the guy had infuriated him so much. Now the instructor understood why the guy had changed his hairstyle, because he had a patron and the guy was just pretending. Xiaoxian looked at the man with a bloodthirsty gaze, noting that admitting one's mistakes is a good thing. The man laughed, noting that the guy was actually a good person. With a smile and a disgusting laugh, he admitted that after all the bullying from others, he thought the guy would lose his mind. In his thoughts, he admitted that if he had experienced such bullying, it would have been difficult for him to go on living. He was even surprised that such a disgusting guy like Qin Tian had already had enough and was able to let Xiaoxian go. Xiaoxian thanked the man, because the situation was resolved thanks to the instructor's words that if they weren't good enough, they had to become better. So he decided to give him a gift and hoped that the instructor would accept it as a token of gratitude. When he saw the box, the instructor was shocked, because the guy was handing him a Pineapple 16, which had just gone on sale. He had stood in line for 11 hours, but was unable to buy it. The man happily took the Pineapple 16, saying that there was no need for thanks, and that he was just doing his duty as an instructor. The guy paused and noted that he had been asked to ask the instructor one more question. The man relaxed completely and asked what question he would like to ask. Meanwhile, the guy had already made a lightning-fast move. For 2 days, he had been tormented by humiliating and unbearable memories of Shioxian. He saw the instructor watching Shioxian's suffering with an intriguing expression on his face. The man's face seemed to say that Shioxian was to blame for everything. Shioxian died because of all this suffering, and no one understood anything. The guy asked only one question: why him? And then he kicked the man between the legs with his right foot. Shioxian kept asking why such a weakling accidentally encountered the spawn of hell. However, the guy sadly stated that Shioxian would never know why he became the scapegoat. At that moment, at Shioxian's house, his mother dropped an egg from a bag onto the floor. She even complained that the bag seemed to have torn. The woman felt sorry because she had spent so much time on it. His mother was worried about Shioxian, wondering if he had taken the phone she had bought him. The man was shaking because the blow was incredibly traumatic. He was angry that the guy had done that. However, the guy was not going to stop there, but rushed towards the man and hit him in the throat with his left hand. Then he struck the man in the face with his right knee. He believed that even a weakling like him could strike such vulnerable spots. However, he did not consider this to be the most important thing, because the key step was to catch his opponent off guard. Then he struck the man in the face again with his right foot. At that moment, the computer turned on, and the guy saw what the man had been looking at all this time. The man cried out in alarm, telling the guy not to come closer. He asked if the man could answer his question right away. The guy asked the man not to rush, as he was not hurrying the man, but wanted to listen carefully to what the man had to say. Meanwhile, Qin Tian was in the hospital. His mother asked her son not to overexert himself, as the doctor said he had a mild concussion. However, the guy didn't seem to have been taught good manners by anyone, as he told his mother to shut up. Reading what was written about him, the guy was angry that all kinds of scum dared to say nasty things about him. After all, in the past, they wouldn't even dare to sneeze in his direction. His mother continued to ask her son to calm down, reminding him that the doctor had told him to stay in the hospital. She asked him not to be angry with her, as she was worried about him. But at that moment, he suddenly saw a published photo taken while he was unconscious. The guy immediately flew into a rage, threatening to find everyone who dared to say a single negative word against him. His mother was surprised to see her son like this and tried to calm him down. However, the guy was clearly not a model of politeness, as he told his mother to shut up immediately or he would shut her up himself. Tears welled up in his mother's eyes at such harsh words directed at her. The security guard standing outside the door of the room heard his mother even happily announce that she had ordered his favorite turtle soup for her son, so the son could eat it if he wanted. However, Qin Tian once again continued to yell at his mother, telling her to get out immediately. However, his mother still didn't leave the room in tears. At this moment, the girl asked her colleague if the second son of the Qin family had always been so spoiled and behaved so disgustingly. The man did not answer her question. The girl did not stop and wondered why he was silent. She even pointed out that the guy had been sent to the hospital on a case. The man told her not to talk too much and to do her job properly. The girl thought that the guy was acting too serious in such a situation. She stated that it was boring to just stand there like that, and he also didn't want to talk to her. The girl even grudgingly stated that she should have resigned. She would have done it a long time ago, because being a security guard is incredibly boring. Plus, she had to purposely spend a lot of time learning the language of country A just for this job. Suddenly, a man approached them. He admitted that he was even a little surprised, because the girl had adapted much better than he thought. The man remarked that it was not for nothing that the girl had been recruited for a position in the H country's intelligence agency. He then greeted the girl majestically, noting that this was their first meeting, and calling her name, Mona Trent. This man was Qin Sheng, the heir of the Qin family, the CEO of Dasheng Company. The girl's face turned red at this moment as Mr. Qin recognized her. With a smile, he reminded the girl that he was currently in charge of the company's security, so he remembered the information of all the employees. Mona Trent was in awe of the man, thinking he was handsome. Just at that moment, the door of the room opened and a surprised woman appeared from there. The mother was happy that her oldest son had come in, but was a little upset that she hadn't heard him come in or seen any notifications. Qin Sheng only smiled after hearing her words. He noted that he had just arrived by airplane and immediately went to the hospital. The older son politely asked his mother not to get upset, noting that his brother was too impulsive a guy and that he would talk to him himself. Mother agreed with his choice because the younger son, no matter how hard it was for him, still listened to his older brother. And then the frustrated woman left them along with her security guards. As Qin Sheng walked into the room, the girl stared after him, openly admiring the man. The second security guard thought that the girl's behavior was too unprofessional. Leaving with her head proudly raised, the woman demanded her security guards to immediately notify the second young mistress that Qin Sheng had returned. The security guards obediently began to carry out her order. Entering the room, Qin Sheng imperiously told his brother that it was not such a big problem. Qin Tian was no longer so vindictive and did not dare to insult his brother as well as his mother, but sat silently with the look of a beaten dog. Standing up near the wall, Qin Sheng asked not to be blamed for engaging in moralizing his brother. He politely reminded his brother that his brother should treat his elders with respect. After all, it wasn't easy for his mother to raise him. He then firmly announced that he would speak meekly and to the point, as there were only 10 minutes for their conversation because he had a business meeting to attend. Sitting down on the sofa and taking off his glasses, Qin Sheng imperiously pointed out that before he left, his brother claimed that he would be running the 26th district for 2 years. However, a month later, his brother ends up in the hospital. Qin Sheng became curious to know what caused his brother to be hospitalized. He even pointed out that Qin Tian had another 9 minutes and 30 seconds to go. After he said that, Qin Tian felt a terrifying aura emanating from his brother, and he was incredibly scared. Meanwhile, outside the door of the room, Mona Trent was surprised that ever since Qin Sheng entered the room, then Mr. Cranky Child had gone quiet. It even struck her that maybe something had happened that she was starting to get a little worried about. The second security guard didn't respond to her questions in any way. Suddenly, she wondered if Mr. Qin Sheng would like her. She even wondered if he liked sweet or spicy, since she liked spicy. The second security guard pointed out to her again that Qin Sheng was her employer, so he asked the girl to stop fantasizing about silly things and better not to flirt with Qin Sheng until she knew his true nature. The girl, on the other hand, confessed that she actually knew Mr. Qin Sheng very well. She knew that at 17, he had become the lightweight Sanshu champion in Country A, and at 18, he had been listed as a participant in the Youth World Games, and at 21, he had won the Mixed Martial Arts Super League lightweight gold belt. According to her information, over the next 2 years, he participated in 57 different mixed martial arts bouts in the middleweight division. He did not suffer a single defeat and became a new star in the fighting arena, becoming known for each. However, at the age of 23, due to the extra attention, he announced that he was retiring and disappeared. She was not aware of what Qin Sheng had been doing for 6 years, and when he reappeared, he was already attending the Dasheng Company's award conference as the 4th largest shareholder. The public at that moment thought that the reason for his return was to inherit the family business. However, it was aware of something that few people knew. Almost no one knew that a year earlier, Qin Sheng had started to rule the murky 26th district. He had become the underground king of the 26th district. Suddenly, a voice behind her said that she seemed to have heard of him. Qin Sheng smiled, reminding the girl that they were former intelligence officers and should protect their employer's privacy. The second security guard immediately thought that Qin Sheng did not leave on his own, but that he was forced to leave. Mona Trent was so surprised by Qin Sheng's sudden appearance in front of her that she thought it was as if he was a cat, since she didn't even hear a sound. However, Qin Sheng decided to politely ask her for a favor. He needed her to study one person. The girl was happy to have some fun in her life, so she gladly agreed to her employer's request. Qin Sheng informed her that he would send her detailed information by message and then informed her that he had to go. The girl wished him a happy journey, much to the displeasure of the second security guard, whom she was setting up to be reprimanded or fired by her behavior. Qin Tian, who heard their conversation, immediately grabbed his phone and called his henchmen. He told them to immediately find Huang Shaoxian and make sure that Huang Shaoxian couldn't even get out of bed anymore. Huang Shaoxian at the same time finally finished copying the information on the flash drive from the instructor's work computer. He was trying to remember how long it had been since he last met a man who had all the evidence on him stored in one place. The guy even thought that the man was definitely an idiot. He calculated that such dirt taken from the instructor's computer would be enough to get several years behind bars for the instructor. The guy even thought that if he turned the instructor into the police, it would be seen as revenge for Shaoxian. He was suddenly surprised when the instructor's cell phone rang. The man was shocked and incredibly frightened. Looking at the guy, he thought that the man in front of him was definitely not a human, but a demon. Shaoxian approached the inspector and calmly said that since it was already evening, he should go home to have dinner, because Oriental food is delicious only when it is hot. In his heart, the man was shocked that the guy had been tormenting him all this time with an expressionless look. It was as if the guy was looking at an animal, not a human being, and had no emotion at all. Shaoxian reminded the man that as an instructor, the man was not doing his job. He could have killed the instructor, but Joe's kitchen won't let him do that, so he decided that he would hand the instructor over to the law and let the police sort through the evidence and try the instructor. The man's face clearly expressed consternation. The guy even wondered slightly if the man was scared or regretful. However, he recalled that the man should have thought of this earlier when he condoned the bullying of one of the students. A cold sweat appeared on the man's face when the guy stated that he forgot to settle some more matters. So he quickly addressed a question he had wanted to ask the man for a long time, especially after the dirt that was on the man's computer. He left the room after that, looking at his tie while complaining about getting dirty. Walking down the street and looking at his phone, he decided he needed to find a place to clean himself up before he went home for dinner. He liked Oriental food so much that he started looking at pictures of the food. Some of the food looked appealing in the photos, but he didn't like spicy food. At this point, he even wondered if his preferences had changed after his rebirth. Therefore, he thought about asking his mother to cook something from Zhou cuisine. At this moment, Qin Tian's minions found him, informing Qin Tian about it. Qin Tian told the guy to take his time and gather the guys behind the academy for now. After all, he wanted to finish the guy himself. However, upon entering their blind spot, Huang Shaoxian abruptly turned around to look in their direction. He had already discovered he was being followed by taking a photo on his phone of a guy who shared a room with him and who he had previously given a good punch to. After a while, it was already dark in the city. Huang Shaoxian walked calmly into the alley, pretending not to notice the group of guys following him. However, quite quickly, the guys surrounded him. Staring at the leader of the group of guys, Shaoxian decided to psychologically crush his opponents. He said that he was surprised that they came back so soon, reminding them that he must not have beaten them up badly enough last time. The guy even directly asked if Liu Lian had forgotten what happened in their last encounter. Liu Lian thought he was a tough guy, so he told Shaoxian not to show off because Shaoxian had attacked him sneakily last time. He was about to say that if it wasn't for his sneak attack, he would have easily dealt with him, but Shaoxian told him to keep his expression down. Shaoxian then pointed Liu Lian to his neck. Liu Lian abruptly remembered what happened to him last time. He became enraged, declaring that this time the guy would definitely be a dead man. Huang Shaoxian even chuckled, calling the guy by his name again. Liu Lian is consonant with the word train, as if he lacks training and is weak. This kind of ridicule made Liu Lian incredibly furious. He rolled up his shirt sleeves, insulting the guy and threatening to tear him to pieces. The other henchmen cheered Liu Lian on. They asked Liu Lian not to hold back, believing that the guy should eat a cockroach burger as a treat for his insolence once again. Liu Lian slowly rushed towards Shaoxian, on the way thundering that the guy wouldn't leave this place alive. Mona Trent was standing quietly on the balcony of one of the nearby houses, wearing a hoodie and cap as if trying to hide her appearance and face. She had a perfect view of Huang Shaoxian's confrontation against Qin Tian's henchmen. However, considering Qin Sheng's previous request, she had to call him. What would Mona Trent do at Qin Sheng's behest? And will she just stand by and watch the guy's legs get broken, or will she do something about it? Mona Trent was telling her boss that the person the boss had asked her to follow was in a bit of trouble. She wondered to the boss if she should intervene in the situation. Qin Sheng inquired what exactly had happened. The girl explained that Qin Tian's friends had surrounded the guy. She remembered them since she had seen them before. Qin Sheng was more interested in whether she had thoroughly checked the guy's background. And after confirming the check from her, he decided that she should just observe him. Qin Sheng was even a little annoyed that the younger brother was giving him trouble because of his temper. After that, he ended the conversation and went back to talking to Mr. Jiang. He politely asked Jiang to continue the conversation, reminding him that Jiang wanted to talk to him about something important. The man mentioned that since the red pill entered the market of the 25th district, the profits of the underground business had increased by 300%. Therefore, many of his superiors felt that now the 26th district should also grab a tidbit. That was the reason why he had approached Qin Sheng. The man's name was Jiang Huaizhong. He was the chairman of the board of JT Entertainment, the heir of the Jiang family, and the executive director of JT Investments. However, Qin Sheng did not share his point of view, advising him not to talk about what his bosses cared about. He wanted to know Jiang Huaizhong's opinion. The man admitted that he thought it was a great opportunity to take the underworld of the 26th district one step forward. After listening to him, Sheng admitted that the profit of 300% from this event was indeed attractive, but he still continued to insist that the 26th district should be completely clean of any pills. Besides, if anyone decided to change this, they would pay with their lives. Qin Sheng clearly expressed his stance regarding such changes to the 26th district. Jiang Huaizhong realized that there was no way out. He asked Sheng not to look down on him since they had been friends for so many years. He finally understood Sheng's position and said that he would convey Qin Sheng's opinion to the boss. He added that he would tell them that Qin Sheng had decided that they should enjoy life and when they got old, retire and not get involved in anything. Qin Sheng accepted his answer and then got up from the couch. He said that he had to go already as he needed to attend the wedding reception of the mayor's daughter. Jiang wanted to see him off, but Sheng refused, reminding him that Jiang still had important things to do and he would find his own way. The girl standing near the door politely said goodbye to Qin Sheng. As soon as the door closed behind Qin Sheng, Jiang Huaizhong stared thoughtfully at his desk. In the same instant, his face creased with anger. He then started throwing objects that came into his hand. He was incredibly infuriated that Qin Sheng dared to insult him like this. The man didn't understand how Qin Sheng even dared to take up space in his territory. Jiang thought that the guy was just a retired boxer, so was obligated to respect him. After all, he was the one who should actually become the underground king, not Qin Sheng. Jiang promised that sooner or later he would tear Qin Sheng to pieces. In a fit of anger, he even threw a chair towards the door, and the chair hit the door next to the girl. Not paying attention to the frightened girl at all, he told her to get out of his office as he was in a bad mood right now. Meanwhile, the hooligans who supported Liu Lian continued to push him to beat up Huang Shaoxian. The guy only smiled as that was exactly what he wanted to do. He remembered that martial arts said that to attack the heart was to attack the mind. Therefore, the best way to defeat a person was to piss them off. Liu Lian was Qin Tian's #1 henchman. He often bullied Shaoxian, so it could be said that he was Shaoxian's direct offender. The guy estimated that the target's height was 190 centimeters, weighing around 100 kilograms. Shaoxian's height was 174 centimeters, and weight was 51 kilograms. Does he even eat at all, or is this classic anime height and weight that is as far from reality as possible? The guy realized that Liu Lian was twice as big as him, so in reality, if he was a normal person, it wouldn't give him a single chance of winning this confrontation. Based on his observations, Liu Lian lacked boxing posture and did not have the usual pace of boxers. So he concluded that the guy in front of him did not have any fighting skills. Paying attention to his wrists, he noticed that they were swollen. He could also smell the faint odor of alcohol that came from Liu Lian. The guy was well aware that at this moment Liu Lian had poor self-control, was quick to get irritated and extremely emotional, and did not have any resilient mental qualities at all. After analyzing the information about Liu Lian, he concluded that the probability of him winning was quite high. At this moment, Liu Lian swung his right hand, which was his dominant hand. He then made a turn to the left, and his speed was greatly reduced, so his body was discoordinated. The leg kick towards the guy was not high enough, so the guy didn't even feel threatened, but only noticed that Liu Lian's flexibility left much to be desired. All this time he continued to analyze Liu Lian and easily dodged his punches. Liu Lian became highly irritated after noticing that the guy was so agile and that he couldn't hit him. Xiaoxian noticed that Liu Lian was using his right fist again, not making any changes in his movements at all. The guy came to another conclusion that Liu Lian had poor concentration and low IQ. Xiaoxian and Mona Trent simultaneously thought that the guy was most likely using a classic triple left-to-right front kick. Mona Trent even thought the triple punch was too boring. Liu Lian approached the guy again and swung his huge arm. Xiaoxian easily dodged his punch and then attacked with his left hand on the elbow of Liu Lian's right arm. Liu Lian tried to realize what had even happened, but at that moment, Xiaoxian hit him with his right hand right in the neck. Liu Lian started waving his arms around haphazardly, trying to hit the guy with his fist. However, the nimble Xiaoxian easily dodged his punches, and at the right moment, he struck Liu Lian's throat with his right hand. Liu Lian once again felt the pain that he did not expect today. Xiaoxian didn't listen to him at all and only thought that the strength of his current body was still too weak, so he was going to train more. Liu Lian continued to swing his arms haphazardly, trying to hit Xiaoxian. At this moment, he noticed another attack from Xiaoxian. Therefore, he figured that Xiaoxian wanted to snap his neck, so he wasn't going to let Xiaoxian do this to him. Liu Lian covered his throat with both hands. However, that was all Xiaoxian wanted to do. After waiting for the right moment to attack, he went on the offensive. Xiaoxian swung his right leg and kicked his right knee properly between Liu Lian's legs. Liu Lian did not expect this at all. The monstrous pain brought tears to his eyes. The other guys felt this blow that cold sweat appeared on their faces. They all thought that the guy had used too dirty a technique. Even Mona Trent thought that the guy used a dirty hold. However, she was surprised that he had won. She now realized that all his previous attacks were just for this control strike. The girl even internally praised him, noting that he was incredibly smart. Squirming from the pain between his legs, Liu Lian fell to his knees. Still writhing in pain, he struggled to utter his words, promising that he would get the guy even from under the ground and then use his own hands to send the guy to the other world. However, Xiaoxian didn't end there. Swinging his briefcase properly, he hit Liu Lian's face with it. Liu Lian immediately fell to the ground and lost consciousness. The girl was surprised that the guy knocked out a healthy guy so easily with a single blow of his backpack. She even thought the guy was carrying bricks in his backpack. The other guys were outraged, thinking that Xiaoxian could only attack sneakily. However, they did not expect that after knocking out their leader, Xiaoxian would rush straight towards them. Instantly, he came at them and started beating them one by one. Some were hit in the stomach, some in the shoulder, some in the head. He pretty quickly straightened out half the guys who had originally arrived to beat him up. The guys who stayed on their feet were amazed at how he was able to knock out so many guys with a few moves. One of the guys advised the rest of the guys not to be afraid, because Xiaoxian is one guy and there are many of them. But at the same moment, Xiaoxian stared at them like a tiger at its prey. He reminded them that it is often said in Shazhou that if you see a tiger showing its teeth, don't think it is smiling. After that, the guy reached into his backpack and grabbed the handle of some object. The other guys were startled, their faces instantly covered in copious cold sweat as they realized Xiaoxian had a hammer. Everyone who was on their feet instantly rushed out, thinking that the guy was definitely crazy for carrying a hammer. Looking at the unconscious guys lying there, he thought they were nothing more than rabble. After all, if they were even a little bit braver, it would be incredibly hard for him. Nevertheless, his original goal was accomplished. The most difficult problem had been solved, but now there was still one more problem left. After that, he informed the girl that he had noticed her a long time ago, so he told her to come out. The girl even gave him a round of applause at her appearance. She admitted that she absolutely did not think that a street fight would make such an impression on her. Mona Trent was quick to appreciate that first, the guy deprived the most combative opponent of his composure, then effectively overwhelmed him, struck a blow, exerting psychological pressure. In addition, she noticed that the guy demonstrated weapons, thus completely breaking the opponent's psychological defense line. She even expressed her deep gratitude to the guy, noting that he made her assignment less boring. Mona Trent saw perfectly well that at first glance, a simple weak guy, but nevertheless with what a strong heart really was. The girl decided to clarify some details. She had originally thought that the guy had used the martial techniques of Country A, so she was eager to find out where a guy like him could have learned it. Sheoxian didn't make any excuses, but immediately asked who she was, why she was following him, and who had sent her. The girl also knew how to annoy people, so she told him that if he wanted to know the answers to his questions from her, he had to fight her first, and if he won, she promised to tell him everything. Just reborn, and already he was attracting unwanted attention from those who should never have known of his existence. And that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you would like to see a sequel, please like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your wishes in the comments. You can also subscribe to Telegram to know about new videos. Bye everybody.